Tom, when we first started talking, you said your interest in joining an association was mostly because of the cemetery. What had you known about the cemetery before the association was formed?
Well, I knew the cemetery was there, and I knew that people from this village here at LaGrange was buried there. And then, as time went on, there was a lot of other people that maybe was descendants of theirs that were buried there. And then it went on to what they called a new part of it, and that was people that were buried later on in years. So it was very interesting to know that you had that kind of people here, number one. And one or two of the presidents have been buried here. I remember Professor Payne, for instance. And that was through stuff that I had read and stuff that I had been told by other people that were descendants of some of the people that were buried there.
Is it considered a family cemetery initially, or is it a community cemetery?
I would say that it was the LaGrange Community Cemetery. That would be my guess.
Mm-hmm. And you say it goes back to some of the early presidents of the college, but also some of the early settlers from this area. That would date back to what time period?
Some of them could date back to the late 1700s, maybe. I'm thinking that maybe some of the people from the Carolinas and Virginia that came in to this area, some of those people are there, you know, that came later. And you have a lot of unmarked graves, and it's disturbing to know that you have those people there. And probably back then they didn't have the money to put markers up for those people.
So did originally most of them have a stone marker, or because, as you say, the money, limited resources, they were wooden markers that may have deteriorated over time?
Well, I'm sure that there were rocks or something at one time there, and for an identification of the graves. But on the other hand, that I may be wrong. May have been a wood cross or something put there.
Roughly how do you know, you said when you first took it over, it had probably been neglected for, easy to say, decades, if 40, 50, 60 years it's been neglected?
It was grown up so bad in bushes and trees and until I would say 40 or 50 years probably before some of that stuff had been cut out. And I'm sure that they kept the part by the Abraham Ricks monument, the big marker, fairly clean because it was rocked off, and on the inside there wasn't that much to clean out. And the rest of it grew up.
Now, if I understand right, the Ricks monument, some of that is made from stone from Italy, is that correct? And who was Mr. Ricks?
Mr. Abraham Ricks was a huge farmer here in the valley. It's located in Spring Valley. And he had this plantation there. And this little place, this little house that we're sitting in, I believe was maybe the cook's quarters at the plantation. That was donated to us. The Ricks, when they died out, there was some of them in Tuscumbia, that's buried in Tuscumbia Cemetery. But the older bunch were here at LaGrange.
Now, what year did you become involved with the association?
When it first started out.
Okay.
In the early 80s. And I know we discussed about the tabernacle, and we also discussed about the need for the cemetery. That at the first meeting we had, I think there was maybe half a dozen of us that owned the cemetery part of it. And from that it grew because the people, the Forwards and some other people, and had people up here, relatives. And one of them, the story was about this lady that was in North Carolina and died, and they brought her back on the train, and then she was buried up here, and they dug her up for some reason. Don't remember all the story, but she was petrified.
Oh my.
And they called her the petrified lady. And if I'm not mistaken, her marriage name was Benson. The Bensons had the plantation just off of the four-lane highway over here. And I remember that story real well about being told.
Well, when you first took an interest in trying to preserve and bring back the cemetery, you mentioned that there were a number of graves unmarked or that were sunken. Have you been able to go back and trace who is buried in some of these plots?
No, I have not. Time did not permit me to do all that because I had a full-time job at the time, and then said that I was a county commissioner too at the time. And both of them kept me pretty busy.
Sure.
And I stayed on as president as long as I could, but I was on a lot of other things that I had to be on, and I had to resign.
But it's still a labor of love for you.
Oh yeah, yeah. And this was the biggest cemetery that ever took on. Now, I've been doing outlying cemeteries for years, and first settlers that came in here. And
what sparked the interest? Is it wanting to preserve a family heritage? Is it wanting to preserve part of the history of the area? What's the interest in preserving that part of our history?
well, I think the main thing is for generations on down the line, and to have something here that to show them that the interest is here, and to get involved and learn the history of what was here. Alabama's first accredited college was located where we are now. And they don't teach it in school, and they just pick up bits and pieces like I did when I was younger. And I got interested in it, and then when I got involved, well, I thought everyone should be involved, but that's not the way the ball bounces.
Are you seeing a growing interest, though, in this type of local history?
I think that we do because of the reenactments and all of this, and with Louise and the LC's hard work. Most especially Louise. Now, she's been a fighter from day one, and she's the kind of person that I got on to all the time about spending her own money, and she's spent a lot of her own money on things that I would have to say, look, we're gonna have to wait until we have a stew or a barbecue, you know. But I give her and Elsie a lot of praise for what they've accomplished here and what they've done. Of course, they've had help. They never did try to say that we do this or do that, but they're always here when you need someone to talk to.
Yeah. Well, I know they appreciate you, especially serving as the first president and all the years you've put in restoring the place and moving facilities up here. So, thank you.
Thank you.